Tonight, Kenya continues to bask in the glory of the elite athletes as this past weekend they thrust us to the global limelight. Now, Kenyans have never been prouder to associate themselves with each other. We were breaking records and setting new ones. But this event also taught us important lessons that with determination, we can do it. And more important, the E-News 15940 spoke to us about the values of having others in our lives. In a country where politics divide us across ethnic lines, we indeed need to re-examine ourselves. Leaders need not be politicians, but anyone selflessly with the country at heart. Tonight, my panel examines the political landscape with the eye of outsiders. Later, they reflect on our cartoon choice of the week, and on Time Bar, we are back in time, 50 years ago. Also look out for the new segment, Who Said What, before the end of the show. But first, it's my take tonight. And the numbers game, that is how much debt can Kenya prudently absorb, is once again up in the air after the National Assembly granted Treasury's wish to have the borrowing limited to 9 trillion shillings. Coming a couple of years after the same house raised the ceiling to 6 trillion shillings. Now, there was a palpable fear that the government was up to its bad ways yet again. However, Treasury defends this new ceiling, and one can easily charge the Treasury of being deceitful, as the debt at 5.9 trillion shillings as of June was already 56% of the GDP against developing countries' benchmark of 40%. Now, with the government intending to borrow another 630 billion shillings this year, the ratio will have jumped to about 61% of the GDP. Why then, we ask, was the ceiling not raised to just say 6.6 trillion shillings to accommodate the immediate borrowing gap in the whole essence of review that was to curb the government's debt appetite? Now, the World Bank has already warned that Kenya is trotting towards debt distress, a view fiercely contested by the very government. And first, were it that the government was a person, it will not spend more than a third of its income on paying loans. Now, Kenya has stretched that to the limit, meaning borrowing more will be imprudent, and they don't understand that. Secondly, the country has taken in subsequent commercial loans at worse rates. I mean, the rates, I think it's about 13%, every commercial loan that this country is taking right now from the local banks, a sign of rising anxiety among lenders over the country's creditworthiness. And thirdly, key foreign exchange earners in this country are on the decline, meaning the ability to service mounting debt will be constrained in time as climate change takes its toll on agriculture, while the productivity of the manufacturing sector has been on the decline for years now. Now, these factors means Treasury has to constantly look within and live within its means to finance that budget. And increasingly, domestic production through programs, or increasing domestic production through programs like value addition, balancing public sector spending with training of the youth to produce higher quality intermediate goods that can compete with the imports and decidedly shift the consequential debt as supplementary efforts that should have helped the country avoid debt stress. And now, that's not happening. And of course, we are thinking also of the future. Now, Parliament should also put its foot down that the new ceiling should not be revised upwards and should be strictly enforced, at least for the next 5 years. Now it's going to the Senate, and senators, all eyes are on you. So tonight, we borrow from the words of Justin Trudeau. He's the Canadian Prime Minister. He says, openness, respect, integrity, these are the principles that need to underpin pretty much every other decision that you make. My guests tonight, Steve Ogola, Alutalala Mhwana, and of course we have Charles Munyui. My name is Ken Mijungu. Welcome to our program tonight. Join the conversation. As always, the hashtag is Sidebar. At NTV Kenya, at Ken Mijungu. Sidebar begins right now.
Don't have any position in the government.
I want to give an order here that the dredging work should stop immediately.
We are asking civil servants to ignore such orders that fellow has no capacity to issue any order to anybody in government.
Watu ya upinzani wafanye kazi ya upinzani.
Hiyo tunataka tudumishe demokrasia. Sasa nani atafanya kazi ya oversight?
Look at opposition as a constructive critique for purpose of development of this nation.
This all Kula Balua about opposition is dead in Kenya is a media creation.
This is where the real conversation happens.
And gentlemen, once again, welcome to the show. Let's open this discussion with just what has played on air right now. The debate on the opposition. You know, this was very deliberate to make sure that we keep the politicians out of this discussion, because we want to discuss what happened in Parliament last week when the President decided to look the direction of ODM and Wiper Party to make sure that they increase the debt ceiling to 9 trillion shillings. But let's begin with where it began, the death of the opposition, and now the handshake that was as a result of that is said to be undermining legislative and, of course, oversight in Parliament. That's why they say there's no longer an opposition. It's government A, government B, and then there is opposition in the government. So very interesting. Let's begin with that, the death of the opposition, Steve. Is this the reason why we find ourselves where we are today?
Thank you, Ken. Just before I make a comment on that, let me just say that it's very depressing when members of Parliament increase the debt ceiling. I don't think that is consistent with a prudent fiscal policy, and the government must reflect. You know, you can't just be looking at the law and expanding the opportunity to borrow without plugging the existing loopholes for wastage and pilferage of public resources. But having said that,
but wait, yes. How would you say that? I mean, Steve, among all the parliamentarians,
yes,
why would you think you're the one with that wisdom to tell them it's not okay?
No, you know, I mean, to be honest, our National Assembly and the Senate, they're not as independent as we may want to believe, or as the Constitution may have prescribed.
Okay.
So there's a lot of executive influence still in the legislature, so that if the executive wants to push something, and we saw this during the mediation talks over the division of revenue, because I acted for the LSK in that case at the Supreme Court, and the MPs are telling us, right, openly that, listen, if the Treasury, CS Treasury gives us a signal that he is okay with 314 billion or 316 billion, we're just going to pass it. But we're like, where's their independence as a house? So the point is, the ability of the National Assembly, particularly to interrogate the government's fiscal policy and discipline, is significantly weakened because of the co-option. The co-option, there's a perception that the National Assembly is very much part of the executive, which is what we wanted to move away from. Well, be it as it may, they need to review that, and we need to reach a level where we can say we can't keep on expanding our debt obligations or opportunity to borrow without plugging the holes. Fundamentally, there's no problem with borrowing, but we have problems that cause us to lose money. Why don't we deal with those ones first? But having said that, on the issue of the handshake, Ken, and the politics of co-option, whether the opposition is dead, legally and constitutionally, the opposition is not dead. Because there's the office of the leader of majority, there is the office of the leader of minority, and they have substantive office holders. Are they performing their roles effectively? No.
Okay.
Why? It is for those individual leadership to explain. But I think in terms of relating politics of opposition and the handshake, in my own view, I believe that the handshake is infinitely popular with the people because it has brought some benefit. There's peace, there's tranquility, and you know, World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index looks at political stability, a very critical component. The only mysterious or unexplained circumstance that although there's some political stability, that has not translated into a robust economy.
Okay.
But the handshake is immensely popular and successful, but the question whether the political opposition has suffered a beating because of the handshake, I think is the approach. You know, previously, the members of parliament, they had an approach that I was completely opposed to. They thought that political opposition is synonymous to having a disruptive philosophy, that you must disrupt government. That is the challenge. You know, they thought that being in the opposition means that you must disrupt government business at every opportunity.
If
Now
it doesn't
that-
make sense, not at every opportunity, if it doesn't make sense.
I
Yes.
said, you don't need to be disruptive in your approach to checking the government.
Okay.
But since that is what they were used to, now they find themselves in a position where they are ideally, fundamentally cooperating and collaborating with government.
Now, as a result of that, we are asking
They are
questions.
unable.
Just before I jump to Alutalala,
Yes.
you said it's immensely popular.
Yeah, very popular.
Regardless of the results, it's destabilizing government institutions. It doesn't matter to you.
No. Here's the thing.
It doesn't matter to you, that
don't-
popularity.
You know, that's not the framing. I find a problem with the framing.
Yeah.
Our institutions
Yes.
are being exposed for what they are. In fact, the reverse is true. Now that you have political stability, our institutions are showing us that they have inability to mature quickly in a stable political system.
Okay, that's how you put it. I'll come back to you, Alutalala.
Yes, Ken.
Yes. Same question. The fact that we find ourselves where we are, where decisions are just being made, Parliament is implementing them, their role is usurped. We're seeing them as subordinates to the executive and not as independent as they need to be, or they ought to be, under Article 95, 96. Does it bother you? And is that the reason why we find ourselves where we find ourselves today?
Thank you, Ken, for the invite. And I think for us, the best service we can do to our viewers is to contextualize the genesis of what we are now perceiving here tonight as the problem. And I have said here a couple of times, and I repeat, that the events leading to the handshake were shrouded in secrecy, they were shrouded in unknown dealings, and as a result, I've described the handshake as the greatest fraud ever visited on the people of this country. And in the fullness of time, it will come clear to Kenyans that the handshake was not about the republic. The handshake was about to midwife the relationship between Honorable Raila Odinga and Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta for purposes of managing the 2022 political matrix. That is what it is. Secondly, my brother has said something which is very good. He says that the opposition politics as then known need not be what they are today. I agree with him on that. The only point of departure with respect to my learned friend is that the handshake cannot be described as immensely popular because that's pretty generous that he has used those words. But I understand, because again, depends on from which prism you are observing this. From where he stands, yes, it's immensely popular. From where I stand,
it's not.
It is a fraud on the people of Kenya.
Okay.
That's objectionable.
Actually, let me justify why it is a fraud. When you are going into an agreement whose genesis is the process that you have undertaken with your NASA colleagues, it is expected that some amount of consultation is taken on board in arriving at that. The reason you are told that his NASA, including his own chief campaigners in the name of Musalia Mudavadi, were not involved is because they refused to come for a swearing in. Now that is water beneath the bridge now. That is flogging a dead horse. The handshake was midwifed for purposes of securing the path to 2022. And this is why we are now in problems. Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta required calmness, and I refuse to use the term calm and peace synonymously because they are not the same. What you're observing now is calm. Not peace. Peace is not the absence of war. And so Honorable Kenyatta wanted to have calmness, call it peace in their context, so that he can manage the transition between now and 2022. You must understand that although the promise was made to Honorable William Ruto that he will come in for the next 10 years, that was for the birds. It was meant to manage him until he delivered the vote for the final term for Honorable.
You speak so authoritatively.
Indeed,
Were you part of this deal? Yes.
Because with the fullness of time, now the chickens are coming home to roost. When was the last time you heard Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta saying that William will go for the next 10 years? It ended with the campaigns of 2017.
And he's not come out also to deny it.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's not come out to say he's not supporting.
So the point that we must accept on this table is that the handshake is fulfilling what it was meant for.
Okay, between
the two.
Yes.
Raila was supposed to come in and contain William Ruto in the last leg of Uhuru Kenyatta's presidency. And that is why Raila Odinga's MPs, without batting an eyelid, they dare increase the debt burden of this country.
Join the government.
Yes. As they were campaigning, their clarion call was, the debt in this country is unmanageable.
Okay.
When did it become manageable?
Manageable, and they're now supporting. I'm coming to you, but just one question for you, yes. Alutalala. Yes. When you say that William Ruto was, Raila Odinga was supposed to come in and contain William Ruto, yes. You're speaking as though you knew the outcome of the election.
That's not true. My brother, with the benefit of many years that the good Lord has granted some of us, we need not read books of history, and therefore we need not study the trends of history in the past. We rely on what we saw with our naked eyes and with the education that we have managed to get.
Okay.
That handshake was premeditated. It was carried out the way it was done because it had a premeditative outcome.
Well,
and this is the outcome.
Yes,
this is the outcome.
Your right of reply will come.
This is the outcome.
When Deputy President William Ruto came out and said Raila first approached him with the deal of the handshake, what are you telling us?
Yeah. Look, it is neither here nor there as far as Uhuru Kenyatta, as far as Raila Odinga and William Ruto are concerned. You must understand that William Ruto actually said he has no problem. He does not. Nobody owes him
anything
as far as the succession is concerned. Yet we know the reality is that he's owed.
All right, Charles.
Ken, MPs are not just about oversight. Actually, there are three. You've talked about Article 95, 96. They are about oversight, representation, and legislation. They are the ones who queue in the Ministry of Roads. They want roads for their constituents. They're the ones who are saying, give us more CDF, because we would like to do more bursary. They're the ones who talk about all this development agenda. The Deputy President is the one who was at one time called Tumetenga. That is money. Those are resources. And these are not ODM, these are not Jubilee, these are the other MPs. Where is that money going to come from? The amount of, the kind of electricity connectivity we are talking about today, the fact that literally just about all kids should be in school, that costs money. So when you look at them just as if their role in this parliament is just oversight government by way of constraining government, for lack of a better way of putting it, when the government wants slightly more money so that it can afford all these things.
Slightly more money?
I said allow me. My point is this.
Yes.
Those members of parliament are the ones that seek re-election on the basis of development, quote unquote, that they have brought to their people. On the basis of the electricity they've brought, on the basis of the roads they've constructed, on the basis of the CDF or bursary they have given to their people, and a lot of other things. So when it is put to them that without this increment, we cannot be able to run. We cannot be able to do these things that we are talking about. And to be fair, there is slightly more infrastructure today than there was 10, 15 years ago.
At what cost? At what cost to the taxpayer?
No, the point is, I wanted us to stop looking at members of parliament as if they are doing this purely because they would like to make Uhuru-Muigai Kenyatta very happy, or Raila Odinga for that matter. The thing is, assuming there was no handshake in the first instance, then it should be assumed, if my brother is assumed to be correct, then William Ruto would be very happy. In which case, still, Jubilee would have a majority to pass these things, because that is what we are talking about. So opposition coming in and saying, we don't need this, we need the other one, I think that does not arise in as far as I'm concerned. We need to look at it in perspective and say, what is the interest of members of parliament in this? Have they seen that it is sensible? Because even when they're saying we cap it, they're not saying we cap it at 5 point something. They're saying cap it at 7.5. Not 6.5 as you're saying, they're saying 7.5. What has
9 trillion.
I am saying
yes.
The members who are opposed to it are saying reduce it to 7.5.
Yes.
They are not saying 6.2 or 5.3.
But how do you say they're opposed to it, yet parliament was unanimous?
I'm just saying,
yes.
The bottom line is, I think we need to move away from the issue of the aspect of borrowing per se. My brother has talked about a very fundamental issue. We've talked about plugging in where the money is getting lost. Because the problem is not the borrowing. The problem is we are borrowing and then we are not able to sustain, we are not able to see requisite infrastructure if need be, because that money has disappeared. A dam was supposed to be here worth so many billion shillings. It is not there. So even in terms of what it was supposed to do, that is not there. So if we can be able to do that, and the same parliamentarians should be the one to help us by way of plugging, even coming up with amending we have seen a lot of gaps, we have seen a lot of lacuna in the laws that we have, to the extent that you have a ruling where a judge has the audacity to say the DCI, much as the law says otherwise, cannot investigate this, cannot investigate matters revenue, KRA and all that. My point is, let us look at these things in perspective. Two things. Number one, ensure whatever we have is not stolen. And those people who can pay taxes, especially, let them pay taxes.
Let them pay. Okay.
Ken, if I got
just hold on, let me just intervene. Let's not conflate issues.
I think so.
The question of the debt ceiling, I mean, there is no opportunity at all to camouflage the MP's inability to contain the executive by riding on the back of the handshake. You can't use the incompetence and inability of Parliament to perform their lawfully mandated functions and explain it away in the context of the handshake. We need to understand that. But let me just make some comment. I don't think there's an opportunity for chaotic expansion of the scope of the handshake. You see, the scope of the handshake is already circumscribed in a 9-point agenda. Yes. If you want to pontificate and broaden what the handshake includes and excludes, I think everybody then has an opportunity to say what enters the imagination. The principles have already circumscribed the context of the handshake, and they have said these are the key issues. And they were engaging with those issues.
Which you still think is a smokescreen.
I think what the problem is this. We need to depersonalize the handshake.
But how?
This is what I'm telling you. That's what I'm here to tell you. We need to depersonalize the handshake, just like we need to de-ethnicize our politics. Politicians ride on the ethnic card because they know it's available.
Okay. They let that with the handshake.
Then you blame that on the politicians. The moment you reject it, they'll never waive it.
Relate that to the handshake.
If you de-emphasize the handshake, say, listen, let us extract. Remember, Ken, before, I was a very skeptical, or what you may consider as an enthusiastic supporter of the handshake. But looking at the transformative value that the handshake has brought, and the innovation that it provides to move beyond the person of Raila and Uhuru.
What is the measure, Steve?
Yes, that's why I'm trying to tell you how to de-emphasize, how to depersonalize the handshake. You see, now that we have tranquility, peace in the country, this is the opportunity for Kenyans to move away from Uhuru and Raila and start interrogating issues that stagnate this country, that make us stranded at the margins of time.
Okay.
But if you keep on saying that the handshake is about Raila, you validate a theory that even them, they didn't even imagine. You give them ideas that they didn't need. This is how people turn leaders into tyrants and into dictators.
Okay.
Because there was peace. Use that peace to converse, have a moral conversation about what is right and wrong, what we can change going forward.
Okay, I need to take a break, but let me hear from Alutalala. Yes.
A product is as good as the process leading to that product. If you have a faulty process, the end product is a faulty product. The process of the handshake was faulty, and we need not belabor this point. And I don't want to appear like my singular objective here is to talk about the handshake. Moving forward, the question that you asked, we must, as you said, we should not conflate the issues. There's a debt ceiling issue, and then there is the issue of lack of opposition. Allow me to say in very few words, opposition as ordinarily defined refers to holding divergent views to that of the government of the day. My brother is right when he says that there is the office of the minority and so forth. It is not right, stricto sensu, as lawyers will put it, to say that the opposition is dead in this country. It's not right. What is right is to say that Honorable Raila is no longer in the opposition, and therefore his brand of opposition politics is absent. So when we say that there is no opposition, you are actually saying we are not seeing Honorable Raila in opposition. We are not seeing his brand, his militancy in opposition.
But Raila is not supposed to be in opposition.
If you allow me, I'll explain that. No. Hold your horses, so that And he has said in that clip that those who are saying that there is no opposition is the creation of the media. But now let's move forward. We have politicians who have remained steadfast in pointing out the ills of the government. Honorable Musalia Mudavadi has been steadfast in condemning the debt crisis. He has been steadfast in condemning corruption and many others. However, because we are a people who go by what we know, we don't see this. It is a high time we understood that we want politics of opposition that is issue-based, that we all can go in the street without throwing stones and make our point known, the way the people of Hong Kong are doing.
Okay.